Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we'll be looking at the S.H.Figuarts First Form Frieza and Pod from Dragon Ball Z. Now, I've looked at the second form, third form, fourth form, and Mecha Frieza before on this channel. I haven't looked at Golden Frieza yet, and I will be looking at the full power 100% form later in the year. And this one was pretty much a notable standout that I hadn't gotten around to yet, and I really should have, because it's one of my favorites just because of the amount of options you have and just how aesthetically great this figure is. And I just was putting it off for a while, and seeing as I got the Mecha Frieza and finished reviewing that one recently, I thought I'd crack this one open and have a proper look at it, especially since I was doing Zarbon and Dodoria at the same time. I want to review all the S.H.Figuarts Dragon Ball figures anyway, so might as well do this one sooner rather than later. So taken out of the box, this is what First Form Frieza comes with, and it's a pretty great loadout. For a standard release figure, it's really good. So we've got the figure itself, an alternate head sculpt, as well as 5 faces. Some faces work for different head sculpts. We also get the Frieza Pod, as well as a Namekian Dragon Ball. So it's a pretty good loadout, and I think it works quite well having Frieza as such a small figure, but with tons of accessories. There's also like a Death Ball effect piece, as well as a Scouter, and you can swap the Scouter for all of the faces, which gives you tons more options. It's very cool. But taken out of the box and put on a display, here is First Form Frieza, and you can see that he looks pretty damn accurate to the show. I don't really notice any proportional changes or anything like that. He scales pretty well with other Figuarts as well, which we will be getting into shortly. But all of the proportions on the figure seem correct to me. The colours are on point, all of the paintwork, what little there is very good. So the Frieza battle armour is painted well as all the brown parts on the arms, shoulders and legs. And all of the faces are detailed very nicely. Everything looks great. And Frieza's one of those incredibly iconic villains. You can't imagine the franchise without them. And I feel like in terms of forms and releases of these figures, it makes sense that the first form and the fourth form were the standard release figures, because those are the forms that we are most familiar with Frieza. When we think of the character, we think of the first appearance as first form, or the final battle between final form Frieza and Goku. It's just an incredibly iconic look either way, and it makes sense that the second form, third form, Mecha Frieza, full power final form were all P-Bandai exclusives. Could have seen the full power form as a standard release, but that's neither here nor there. But there's a reason why this look is so iconic, and why they went for this one after so many releases of the fourth form and didn't touch second and third until recently. It's because the first form is so incredibly iconic, it's so menacing and eerie. There's so much we didn't know about Frieza at that time, and it just works. And this figure really captures that. Now, before moving on, we'll do a quick size comparison. So here Frieza is up against the S.H.Figuarts Bardock. Here he is next to the Jada Toys Ryu. Here he is next to Zarbon and Dodoria, so you can see how he scales with his henchmen. And here he is lined up with all the other Friezas released so far. Posability wise on this figure, it's pretty much what you expect. So ball joint at the head and neck allows for a pretty good range of motion for such a small figure. The shoulder pads can flip up, just like a lot of the other armor figures that we've had. The arm can rotate all the way around. There is a butterfly joint. It's a little bit stiff, but you can get it working. There's bend at the elbow, swivel at the arm, as well as a ball hinge at the wrist. You can also rotate around the actual forearm. There is a ball joint in the upper chest of the Saiyan armor. It allows for a little bit of movement, but not a whole lot. There's a swivel at the waist. They can kick forward and back that far, bend at the knees, swivel at the thigh, and hinge at the ankle. The tail can also move around. There's a ball hinge, and there is a swivel as well, but I didn't show it. But generally, it's pretty good articulation. You do need to balance out the figure if you want them to stand up. Thankfully, the tail can work with that, and if you don't mind the slight weird aesthetic of the tail resting on the ground, depending on the pose you're in, then you don't really need a base at all. which is nice, but it's a pretty solid figure and some pretty decent articulation considering its size and at this point the age of the figure, because it's a few years old now. Frieza comes with 5 faces, so there's the standard smiling face out of the box with somewhat large eyes. There is another sort of like slightly more upturned grin smiling face, but the eyes look a bit sharper on this one. I really would have rathered a different face entirely rather than these two incredibly similar expressions, but it does kind of work once you get them in poses. But they are incredibly similar, so much so that I thought I had doubles of the same face when I first got it. Frieza also comes with a teeth-gritted angry face, which looks great, and an alternate head sculpt for the shouting faces. So there's a big wide mouth yelling face, which looks incredible, as well as a big wide mouth laughing face with Frieza looking down a little bit. And these faces make the figure absolutely, they look so good. And you also get even more options because you can take off the little side earpiece on any of the faces and attach a scouter. So you can change the look of Frieza, making it seem like it was Frieza from much earlier in Namek or even in the Bardock movie. The scouters are fine. This sort of era of them, they just help with the aesthetic sort of at a distance, but they don't really line up perfectly with the eyes. So it's just like a nice option to have, but I don't think they actually add all that much to the figure themselves. But again, it's nice to have. But with those faces, you can get Frieza into some really nice poses. The exaggerated laughing and shouting faces are in particular very, very good. And the articulation, while decent enough, can get him into all the poses you need him in. And I really appreciate that. I also appreciate just the death ball effect. I would have liked a bigger one, but it does fit First Form Frieza to have just the small one on the tip of his finger. It looks very nice. And then of course we have the Frieza pod, which looks very, very good. Nicely detailed. I believe this was the first time when they detailed the interior of Frieza's pod, and they had to ask Akira Toriyama what it looked like. It was either this or the model kit of First Form Frieza, where they just had to like actually figure out what's inside there. But basically you pop off Frieza's waist and tail and you plug it into the slots that are on the pod, and away you go. It looks really, really good, aesthetically perfect, and it's just a great accessory to have, and it makes sense that First Form Frieza would have something like this. And it just opens up even more possibilities for this figure. And that's pretty much it. It's a rock solid release and one of my favorite figures aesthetically. Has a good range of accessories. You can get him into some nice poses. Completes dioramas. Fits with most Namek figures. You can recreate tons of poses and scenes with this figure. Relatively inexpensive because it is a standard release, but because it came with a bit more, it is more than, say, like buying a Saiyan Raised on Earth Goku or something like that. But it is all relative. And it is very good if you're collecting Namek figures. Highly recommend grabbing First Form Frieza. If you're trying to complete all the Friezas, well, obviously you'll need this one. And it's just a good Figuarts to have. If you had to choose between any of the Friezas to get, between first, second, third, fourth, or Mecha, because the fourth form Frieza is so old as a sculpt, it is a little bit hard to recommend it. The second form is probably the best figure out of the lot, but as far as a standard release goes with accessories, the first form is very, very good. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I will see you all next time.